Hello everyone, welcome to the second class of week 2. We're going to be finishing up polymodeling, like intro to polymodeling this week with Booleans. Booleans are going to be a little bit trickier to work with, a little bit more advanced of a tool, but I just wanted you guys to become aware that they exist. So if you ever need to like put a hole into something, I'll go over what they do in a little bit, but it's basically using an object to modify your desired object. So we're going to be making this spoon today. I'll post a reference image of it up if you want to use this spoon. Otherwise you can find something similar. I chose this one because it looks like the scoopy part's like cut out of the wood. So I thought this was a good example just to show how you can use Booleans. So let's get started. Actually, let me make sure where my face is. I'm going to put my face up at my outliner. Okay, so first I'm going to hide my cupcake. I can just select all of the objects and hit H, and it's going to disappear. It'll still be listed in your outliner, but it just won't be visible in your viewport. And just as a demonstration of what Booleans do first, before we get into our spoon, I'm just going to make two very basic primitives. So Shift A, add a cube, Shift A, let's add like a sphere, and then just position it here. So the Boolean tool is in your modifiers. So say I wanted to use the sphere to kind of mold my cube. I'm going to go into the modifiers section of my cube, which is again that wrench. And there should be one just called Boolean. And you can see right away we have the Boolean option. Nothing's happening because it's highlighted in red. That means it's not working. And that's because we have to tell the Boolean what object it's using to do the Boolean effect. So grab this little dropper, and I'm going to select it on my sphere. And you're going to just see like very minor changes at first. You can see sphere is now listed in the object section, but we also, since we had that cube selected, you can see there's the yellow highlight outline of the object is different. So it's following that sphere. The sphere is cutting into that cube. For us to be able to see this a little bit better, I'm just going to change the visibility settings of the sphere. So some of you might have before accidentally like hit wireframe mode. So just general world options are up here on the right, but we just want to change this sphere individually. So I'm going to select my sphere, and this is going to be in object properties. So the orange square on the right, this has like world information about your object, but it also, let me close them first for the grand reveal. You also have like visibility and viewport display options. So we want to go to the viewport display and then display as. We're going to change this to wire. And now we can see through our sphere and actually see what it is doing to our cube. Sorry, I'm zooming. I'm zooming a lot this class. Okay, so now that we can see what's happening, let's go back to our Boolean settings, which are in our cube, in the modifiers. And we have three different choices. Right now it's on difference, so that means the sphere is cutting into the cube. There's also union. And now, again, notice that yellow highlight line. This is now including the sphere shell as part of the cube object. So you might be able to see a little bit better inside. The cube, instead of like continuing as a cube, is merging up to become the sphere. So if you like, for example, made your frosting for your cupcake, the like different levels as two separate objects, you might want to now go in with Boolean to combine them and kind of smooth out that edge that merges them. Just for the way that lighting is going to hit this corner, if these were separate objects, would look a little bit unrealistic compared to if we joined them and wiggled that edge around a little bit. So that's union. So we're combining the sphere to the cube. There's also intersect. This is if you want to like use it as a cookie cutter, I guess. If you wanted to like cut out a pie slice, you might use like a long, elongated like triangular corner of a cube to like cut out a pie slice from a cylindrical pie. So anytime you want to use a shape to cut out a shape, that's intersect. Intersect. For now, we're just going to use difference. You're most often going to use this for union or difference. I haven't had the big brains enough to use intersect, but it'll have its uses once you become more comfortable with using Blender. So back to difference. Like our other modifiers, the Boolean one is non-destructive. So that means I can go back in and make edits to both of my objects, and it's going to update that Boolean live. So this isn't finalized until I tell it to be final. So you can see I can change the location of my sphere if I need. I can change the scale of it. I can even go in, grab a vertex, and work with it that way. Same goes for the cube. So if I needed to go in and like change the height of a corner, etc., we can do that live. You're going to notice when you are in edit mode of the shape you want to be cut into, it's going to look whole. But once you go back to object mode, it'll show that Boolean effect happening. One other thing to note is, say I didn't want these faces showing. If I did the shade smooth effect on that sphere, it's smoothing out those faces. Say you can add like the subdivision surface if you would want. So really you're just making like a fully formed second object to use to do the cut into your desired object. And once you're done, you'll hit apply. And I can delete my sphere because it's not needed anymore. But now let's look at the geometry it created. So this is the downside of Booleans, is it creates very messy meshes. Normally you want polygons, so the four-sided, four vertices, four edge faces. But when we work with Booleans, especially irregular objects like we created, it's kind of putting vertices randomly spread throughout that square. So you're gonna have, if you're like doing like a block of Swiss cheese and you're just cutting circle after circle after circle, eventually you're gonna run into an issue where your mesh doesn't understand itself anymore, and it's probably not gonna work. So you wanna, if you do need to use Booleans, they are available to you. They are very powerful and helpful, but just know that you'll often, to keep working with your mesh, you'll need to clean it up. So I would need to go back in to this and make some four-sided polygons out of whatever was made here. So this is when you might use that knife tool. I haven't used the knife tool individually, but I'll probably go over cleaning up meshes sometime later in the semester, but I just wanted you guys to know Booleans are here. If you need to do a lot, you'll need to clean up your mesh. And then one other quick thing, if you are like doing something where you know you'll need like a hole cut out, so if I was doing a window in a wall, you usually will want to plan ahead with your cuts and how many faces are there, so that you could just go in with face mode and do that selection and delete the faces individually, so that you can avoid doing a Boolean. But you do have Boolean at your disposal if you need to do this cut. So a cleaner way of cutting into your object would be deleting faces individually, but that's not always the most efficient option or the easiest option, so you do have Booleans to make whatever this is that I made. So now let's get started on our spoon. Once I remember how to delete something. There we go. So, first we're going to import a reference image that I will have posted on Discord. So, Shift A. So right now I'm going to be doing it wrong, so don't follow me if you're like following me live. So Shift A to add, and you could go down to image and there's reference image. And we're going to find where we have our picture start. Spoon. So this is why I did this wrong. You're going to notice that this isn't lined up with any axes. It came in, so it's directly facing where my camera was. So because I had my camera at this angle, it just came up like flat for me. So that's why it's at this angle, and just to save trouble so you don't have to like try to go in and rotate it, just before you're importing an image, go into top view or side view if you're doing a side view reference image. So again, tilde, top view, and then do Shift A. So this is the correct way. Follow along now. So go into top view, Shift A, image, reference, and now load in your spoon. And you'll see it's actually like laying down like a piece of paper now. So let's do a zoom of the spoon real quick. Zoom of the spoon. So for making the spoon, I'm probably going to be doing it with a cylinder. You could probably do it with a cube as well, but basically I'm going to have like a really long primitive. I'll have like one cap of my cylinder here, one cap here, so it's just going to be a long stretched out cylinder. And because it like is a little bit curved, that's why I'm doing cylinder. You could do cube, either put some bevels on these edges or subdivision surface. I will probably be doing that anyway, but I found I actually enjoy it working with cylinders a lot more than I thought I would, so I'm doing a cylinder. Okay, so get back into our Blender and let's import, or not import, just add. So Shift A, I'm doing a cylinder, and let's get our measuring on. So remember that we are working from real life measurements. My reference image doesn't know that, so I'm probably going to have to change the scale of it. So this is going to like actually determine the scale I'm working at, and then I can change the scale of my reference image. So like my teaching sticks, teaching wands. And right now my cylinder is going like up and down, but I'm going to be rotating it. So just keep that in mind as you're making these first alterations. So I'll probably do 1 centimeter radius and just 1 centimeter depth as well. I guess depth is going to change. We'll just keep depth. So just 1 centimeter radius, and then vertices. I'm not going to need so many because it's going to be so much smaller. So how many do I think I need? So the fewer the better, just so that our Boolean is not so confused. I think I'm going to go with 8, just so that I have like a nice quartering of this. And now right away, first I'm going to label it so it's behind my face, but I'm just double clicking cylinder, changing it to spoon. And now I'm going to rotate this to lay the length of my spoon. So R for rotate, I want to be rotating it around the y-axis. And then an easy way just for it to lock like into a 90-degree rotation is to type in 90. So hit 90 and then enter. And there we have our finished spoon. Once you have that laid out, so this width is going to be the width of the skinny part of the spoon. So with that in mind, we can go in and scale down our reference image. So just hit S, and then you're fine to scale it down in all directions. I actually probably want this X-ray mode, so I put X-ray mode on just so I could see through my object, and X-ray mode is up here. So scaling it down. I'm going to go into top view one more time just to check my alignment. So I'm probably going to move my reference image down on the y-axis. So grab and then Y just to center it on that cylinder as best I can. Okay, so now that we have that, we're going to start working with our cylinder. And first we need to shorten it. So S for scale, and I want to shorten it along the x-axis. I am not zoomed out enough. Okay, S for scale, X for the axes we need to scale it on. How's that? A little bit more. So I'm just doing like end to end of that spatula or spoon. And now let us go into edit mode for the spoon. So hit tab, and I need to add some edges going vertically along this so that I can have more vertices to work with to get that width of the scooping part and the handle. So I'm going to just go into loop cuts, hit left click right away, and then let's increase our number of cuts. And I'm just going to be eyeballing this to kind of see how many vertices I want to be working with. I can always go back in, add a subdivision surface. I think we'll do 16 or 15. 16, 15. Nice even number. Or, well, it's not even, but part of 5 breakdown. And now that we have this, we can go in with vertex mode selection. And I'm just going to be doing like a block select, or if you don't have X-ray mode on, you can do a loop select of these various parts of your spoon. So make sure you have that whole thing around selected. And then make sure soft selections turn on. Your circle up here should be glowing blue. If it's not, just hit O. And then when I do scale, so I want to scale it to be wider. So S for scale. And I only want to scale it along the y-axis. So make sure you hit Y. This is important if you don't do this. So even though I'm in top view, I'm only going to be seeing the Y change. So if I don't restrain that, I'm going to be also like making this part fatter and probably like pieces further apart from each other. So make sure you're restraining your basic transformations. And then my proportion selection was so small. Okay. Make sure your proportion is affecting other things. And I'm just kind of looking at this right now to get that matching, and now I'll grab this end piece, go in with scale, only scaling it along Y, and I can shrink that down. Do the same thing over here at the wide part of the spoon. So try to find like the widest part maybe there. I probably could have used some more cuts. Scale it only in Y. Make sure I increase my proportion, and I'm looking at the left side of where I've selected to have it follow that. And now I can go in to this edge piece. So I've been hitting B for box select and scale this down in only the y-axis. Oh, I'm making my proportion size real big. There's the circle, okay. And probably something like this will do. So let's look at what we have so far. I'm gonna just drop the reference image down on the z-axis a little bit. So here's our spoon so far. Let's smooth it out. So shade smooth. Let's add in some subdivisions. So with the modifier, subdivision surface. I think I'll want 2 in the viewport, 3 in the render. And then before we get into doing our booleans, I'm just gonna curve down the scoop part a little bit. Most of the spoon is like relatively the same in the z-axis, but the scoop part is kind of scooping down a little bit. So I just want to press these vertices down a little bit. But if I go in, select one of those, let me get in a better view. Do grab, there's no good view. And then move it downward. You can see it's moving the ones above it, and we don't want that. We only want the bottom ones to be affected. So I just need to hide part of my model for now. So if you don't want like some part of your model affected by your proportional selection, you can just hide it while you're doing that transformation and then unhide it when you're done. So let me do like a front view so I can select this whole top part. I'll do these 3 rows and then just hit H for hide. It'll look like you deleted them. Oh, and I hid more than I meant to hide. Do that again. Front. Okay, so B for box select. I'm in transparency X-ray mode, so I'm fine with selecting all of them. And now if I hit H, I'll only have the bottom of the spoon showing. So now I can go in, grab on to a vertex or 2. I might do 2. And then do grab, moving it down in Z, and try to make a scoop. And that's pretty good. It's not too exaggerated of a scoop. And then to bring my other vertices back, I can hit Alt H or Command H. So there we have our spoon before our booleans. It could use a little bit of refinement, probably some more definition at the corners, but I'll leave that to you guys because we want to focus on figuring out how to put this hole in the top and then our scoop into the spoon. So let's do the scoop first. If you look at that, it's kind of ovular, so let's use a sphere. So Shift A, I'm making a totally separate object to do this with. We need to scale this down. I guess I could even measure the radius. 3.5 centimeters? Oh my gosh, I'm doing the thing where I'm not typing. Okay. And then rings. I don't want so many rings. Just to have less vertices showing up. We'll try it with that amount. And now we're going to try to position it and scale it so that it's properly doing that cut. Actually, let me do a little bit more. I don't know how many I want. I probably just put them back at the same. Okay, so now that I have that set, I'm going to move it. G, grab X to move it over my spoon. And now I want to rotate my sphere because I don't want this mess of vertices actually being in this mesh. I just want these like square parts. So I'm going to rotate this. So R, rotate, I want to rotate it around the y-axis. And again, easy way to just rotate it 90 degrees is to type in 90 and then hit enter. And now I can scale this to match my reference image. So I'm going to go into top view. S for scale, I only want to scale it in the x-axis. So it's not centered too well, but how's that? I think it's a little bit too big. So S for scale, I want to scale down in the X and probably scale down in the Y. So S, Y, and then this this isn't this deep of a scoop. You can't really see too well, but it's not very deep. So scale it down in the Z-axis. That's probably good. And then let's start our Boolean cut to see what else we need to change about this. So click on our spoon, add modifier Boolean, and then it's highlighted red because you haven't selected what's cutting into it yet. So hit the dropper bottle or dropper, and then if I click on my sphere, you can see now the object listed is sphere. And if I change the display of that sphere, so click on your sphere, go to the object properties, so that orange square, down to viewport display, display as wire. And now we can see how it's affecting that geometry of our spoon. And you can see it's really, really chunky right now. So we want to smooth out the sphere shape. So I can right click, hit smooth, and I might even want to add a subdivision surface. And now we can play around with the placement of this. So I think I'm gonna want to raise it up a little bit. Might even want to move it back. So you can make any changes you need up until you hit apply on that Boolean. So let's see how this will work. Actually, let's make it a little bit thicker. And then I'll raise it up a little bit more. I'm trying to get this like connection of dots to be above the lip of my spoon. Come up, there we go. So now let's see how that'll turn out. So for some reason the subdivision was making the cut like non-existent, so I'm just gonna delete that. And let us go to spoon, hit apply. I can go in and delete that sphere, and you can see we have a scoop, but it's done some wonky stuff with our geometry. I probably want to go back in and fix that because I did get some of that weird geometry there. Let's see how it looks without this. So we would want to fix all of this, clean that up. Oh yeah. And all of this, you'd want to clean that up. You'd want to clean that up. And I'm not going to show in this class, but an easy way to clean things up is with your knife tool to create more faces like coming from these now just like random floating vertices. So we have a cut there, our Boolean, and now let's really quick do our Boolean at the top. I got rid of my subdivision, didn't I? I meant to just hide it. Okay, so we want to do this top hole, which is conveniently it's just a cylinder. So Shift A, mesh, cylinder, and let's scale this down. Again, to scale it down in slower increments, hold down Shift. I'm gonna grab onto the cylinder, move it along X, get it lined up, G, X, I think, oh my gosh, we're almost lined up. There we go. Okay. So this one should be a little bit simpler. Again, we can apply Boolean, use the dropper, select the cylinder. Let's change our viewport display of that cylinder, change it to wire. And now you can see what's happening in there. If I change it to shade smooth, it smooths out those creases. And again, you can see the faces are being a little bit mutated, and that's just because it's creating a messy mesh. If we go into our edit mode, that you would want to clean up. And this one's a lot easier to clean up than this one. So just keep that in mind when you're using Booleans, that you can't just use them too hectically, because you're going to reach a point where your mesh just won't be able to understand how to form itself anymore. So you want to try to make clean as cuts as possible. And we'll work with, beginning of next class, we'll work a little bit with cleaning this up. But I'll see you guys next time.